Newzroom Africa's Govan Whittles joins us live from London. He, of course, is with the President this week. Govan, your itinerary partly made up of keeping up with the President, and I hope some behind-the-scenes stuff as well for you in terms of sightseeing in London. But let's talk then about this visit and what has happened on day one today.
Well, today was just the arrival of the President here in London. He arrived earlier this morning at Essex, and because he hasn't been officially welcomed by the royal family as yet, he won't be making any public appearances until that happens. That's the reason why we haven't seen any engagements by the President today. But he will be welcomed tomorrow morning by the Prince and Princess of Wales, and shortly thereafter we'll see what is known here in England as an historic horse guard ceremony, which essentially entails the President exiting the vehicle which he was travelling with, that Bentley allocated to him by the British government, exiting that and getting onto a horse and carriage. The first democratic president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, famously did so when he was welcomed here on a state visit in 1995 by the late Queen Elizabeth II, and tomorrow morning, we'll see President Cyril Ramaphosa doing the same. This time, he won't be accompanied by his wife, Dr. Tsepo Motsepe. That's because the presidency says she's been unable to take the long journey after undergoing a surgery on her eye, and it explicitly stated that the President would be conveying his deepest regret that Dr. Motsepe couldn't join him on this trip. But we saw him this morning arriving on that presidential plane in Kwazi from South African Air Force, and his engagements here will be accompanied by a host of senior ministers. He's accompanied by, of course, the International Relations Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, but also Dr. Blade Nzimande, and also the Trade and Industry and Competition Minister, Ibrahim Patel, and Health Minister, Dr. Joe Patla. The Health Minister is joining the President on this trip because the President will visit the Frederick Krink Institute, which is an internationally renowned biomedical research institute made up of 6 other smaller research institutes here in the UK that work closely with South Africa on that sequencing. Remember, South African scientists were really lauded for their breakthrough work during the pandemic in sequencing the COVID-19 virus, and some of the achievements that were lauded during that time will be discussed when the President visits that institute, but it really is the visit with the King that is the most anticipated. King Charles first visited South Africa with the Queen Consort in 1997. He was also the person that received former President Nelson Mandela when he came to London in 1995, and of course King Charles also attended the funeral of the late President Nelson Mandela in Johannesburg. So he does have a long-standing relationship with South Africa. We heard this morning from the International Relations Minister that one of the reasons the President came here is because the invitation was extended by the late Queen Elizabeth II before she had passed on. And at the funeral, King Charles indicated to our President that he would like to honor that invitation. That's the reason we're here today, and we're coming to you live from Trafalgar Square. It's one of the famous landmarks here in London. It's where former President Nelson Mandela addressed the British in 1995, the British government, and thanked them for applying those sanctions on the apartheid government, thanked them for the role that they played. And of course, this is also an area that's hugely significant for the anti-apartheid liberation struggle, where the ANC's former president, Oliver Tambo, was based for 30 years. It's where he rebuilt the ANC. Earlier, we went to Muswell Hill, where he was based outside of his home, and we spoke to the branch chairperson of the ANC branch in London. That brings in the political element, and they have endorsed President Cyril Ramaphosa for another term, just 3 weeks ahead of that conference. And interestingly, they've also endorsed the former Speaker of the National Assembly for the position of Deputy President. Let's take a look now at what Olani Kala had to say.
It's very something that gives us hope, because for time to time we see our mothers and our sisters difficulties of not coming with one voice when you have to support a female candidate. But this time around, they went through a vigorous a process of nomination. And we were very pleased for them to nominate the Deputy President as one of their own, which is Thandi Modise.
All right, so that's our reporter Govan Whittles out in London at Trafalgar Square. As you heard today, just being day one of then this visit by the President, accompanied by several ministers. Govan will leave it there for tonight.